In the month of December at 5 a.m., the United States Marine Corps Special Operations Command entered the Bala Murgab River Valley in northwestern Afghanistan, an area under Taliban control. The location was dominated by the enemy, who took advantage of the steep mountains, narrow valleys, and natural infiltration routes to conduct well-coordinated ambushes and lightning attacks, executed with speed and precision. From elevated positions, the insurgents observed movements throughout the valley, chose the exact moment to strike, and then withdrew to hard-to-reach areas before any effective reaction could be organized. This mastery of the terrain turned the region into an extremely hostile environment, where every advance required maximum caution and any mistake could be fatal. Taliban forces exercised control over much of the valley. Coalition troops sought to gain control of the region, but every advance was met with intense and well-organized resistance. The enemy knew the terrain in depth and exploited every avenue of approach, turning simple movements into high-risk operations. For the elite team of U.S. Marine Corps Special Operations Forces, the mission was clear: to seize a strategic position located at a dominant point with a wide field of observation over the entire valley. From that elevation, it would be possible to monitor enemy movements, anticipate attacks, and provide cover for American and Afghan troops operating in the lower areas. At the same time, capturing the terrain meant denying the Taliban a key piece of ground that had been used for years as a natural platform for ambushes, observation, and coordinated attacks, decisively altering the tactical balance in that hostile region. At 5:20 a.m., the advance of U.S. forces, in conjunction with the Afghan National Army, was initiated. The timing was chosen to reduce troop exposure by taking advantage of the darkness. The ascent up the steep slope was slow, silent, and extremely exhausting, demanding maximum effort with every meter gained. The weight of the equipment was already significant, but it became even more punishing for the operators responsible for carrying the Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifle, an oruge that weighs over 14 kilograms, not including ammunition, optics, and accessories. Even so, there was no doubt about the choice. Every difficult step was justified by the decisive role of that weapon. Once the position was established, absolute supremacy over the battlefield would be achieved, allowing engagement of targets at distances far beyond the effective range of the PKMS and RPGs used by the Taliban. From that dominant position, the team could control access routes into the valley, neutralize threats before the enemy even realized their presence, and transform terrain that had previously favored the insurgents into a tactical advantage for coalition forces. At 6:20 a.m., the first phase of the mission was completed and the perimeter was established. The operators prepared their defensive positions, working with speed and precision, fully aware that time was a critical factor. Claymore mines were carefully emplaced along likely avenues of approach, while the team reinforced the camouflage of their positions, using terrain and vegetation to reduce any chance of detection. But there was something in the air. The enemy would not take long to react. At 7 a.m., from the captured position, the soldiers observed suspicious movements on the valley floor. The enemy, now aware of the loss of territory. The altitude provided a decisive advantage. From there, the team could observe the enemy without being engaged. The soldiers initiated the engagement procedure and confirmed the distance to the targets. The sniper made the final adjustments, correcting for elevation and wind speed, and locked the crosshairs onto the first enemy fighter. The Taliban fighter was hit. At 7:10 a.m., the area erupted into shouting and gunfire from the enemy in all directions. At 7:30 a.m., an American soldier spotted through his scope an enemy fighter maneuvering a PKM machine gun, seeking cover behind a wall of a compound in the valley. The decision was instantaneous. The Barrett went into action once again, and the shot violently breached the cover. The projectile punched through the mud brick wall with ease, blasting dust and fragments into the air as the enemy operator was thrown backward, neutralized before he could open fire. At 8 a.m., the sniper identified a new target, an enemy group advancing. The first shot struck the embankment ahead of them. The second shot was precise, finding its mark and neutralizing the fighter. The Taliban hesitated before leaving cover. The heavy sound of the Barrett echoing through the valley imposed caution and disorder on the enemy. For the men holding the front line, it marked the true beginning of the battle. With the Barrett operating at full capacity, the team transformed the open valley, once favorable to the insurgents, into a hostile and tightly controlled environment, where every enemy movement could be observed, anticipated, and punished from a distance. Intense exchanges of fire were recorded. The situation then began to change in a noticeable way. The Taliban started to gather and organize their forces. PKM machine guns began operating at full tempo, sending heavy bursts that streaked the slope with tracer fire. The sniper aimed at a hostile team armed with a PKM that was laying down continuous suppressive fire. Seconds later, the shot tore through the air, echoing across the valley, and the threat was neutralized, instantly halting the stream of fire pressing the position. For the sniper, every shot became a definitive choice, made in fractions of a second. The violent recoil of the Barrett slammed into the shooter's shoulder as the heavy echo of the shots rolled through the valley. On the enemy side, the momentum of the attack began to fade. Any enemy exposing themselves with an RPG was neutralized before they could even fire. The Marines held firm in their positions, clinging to the terrain and maintaining control of the mountain. The defensive line still held, but now by a razor-thin margin. Then a message came over the radio. Close air support inbound, 1 minute out. Then came the sound the Marines had been waiting for, a distant roar of engines, appearing on the horizon and growing rapidly until it dominated the battlefield. Recognizing it, the Marines took cover, began marking priority targets, and transmitted coordinates over the radio, organizing the battle space. Each call was made with precision, preparing the ground for the decisive arrival of air support, which within moments would shift the balance of the fight. Seconds later, an intense flash erupted as a 500-pound bomb detonated at the exact center of the enemy position. The shockwave tore across the ground, rolling up the slope and shaking the defensive line, making the impact vibrate through bones and teeth alike. The effect was instant and devastating, decisively altering the tempo of the battle. Taliban fighters collapsed into complete disarray. Formations broke apart, coordination vanished, and men began running in opposite directions, driven solely by the instinct to survive. What had been an organized counterattack simply ceased to exist, dissolving under the decisive force of the airstrike. The scene revealed the intensity of the fight. Empty shell casings scattered across the ground, shattered rocks, and Taliban weapons abandoned, twisted or broken during the hasty, disordered retreat. The position had been held, but the cost of the battle was etched into every detail of the terrain. The solid frame of the .50 caliber Barrett was coated in soot and dust, marked by hours of combat, yet it remained intact, steady, and fully functional. The mountaintop remained under coalition control. For the Taliban, the action represented a hard and undeniable defeat. For the Marines of the Special Operations Team, it was clear confirmation of why a .50 caliber sniper accompanies missions in the most hostile terrain of Afghanistan, not merely as a long-range weapon, but as a decisive balancing factor, capable of changing the course of an entire battle.
Soldier, tired of losing your strength on the battlefield? If you stayed until the end, you deserve to know our exclusive recommendation. Discover it right now in the pinned comment.